Right now, let's check in with former U.S. Congressman Rick Lazio. He's senior vice president at alliantgroup. And former Congressman Lazio has had a great deal of experience with congressional negotiations, including those over taxes. So, Mr. Lazio, I'd love to get your opinion just from the outset of what the biggest challenge will be for President Trump to push through any tax deal.
Well, thank you, Lisa. I mean, the first thing, of course, is that comprehensive tax reform at its most basic level is extremely difficult. That's why it only happens once in a generation. The last major comprehensive tax reform was signed into law by President Reagan in 1986, so 30-odd years ago. And why is that? It's because comprehensive tax reform has winners and losers, and the losers tend to fight harder for the things that they already have that they risk losing than the people that have the potential to win.
Wait. Hold on a second. I'm trying to wrap my head around what some of those ideas could be. So can you give us an example of something that certain constituents wouldn't want to lose that would be up for grabs, that would be something that they would fight hard for?
Sure. The mortgage interest deduction, for example.
Yes.
Where the realtors and home builders and where they have got sort of institutional support in every congressional district in the nation. One of the reasons why Paul Ryan and other Republicans want to have a bill to the president before the August congressional recess is they don't want members to go home and get their brains beaten out politically at town hall meetings because of these Washington groups that have organized well and are pushing back. They'd rather have the vote have taken place, that it's in the past, and that there may be some grumbling afterwards, but it doesn't create nervousness or weak knees on the part of members that they're going to count on for the vote. So that's an example of a potential loser in this, meaning that fewer people may be able to take advantage of the mortgage interest deduction if it is capped than exists right now.
Okay, so
that's clearly one reason. The second reason, of course, is that Donald Trump has a different and smaller political base than most past presidents. And then, most recently, of course, the defeat of the Republican health care bill creates even more risk now for tax reform.
So expand on that. I mean, how much damage was done by the failure for the GOP to get a health care bill brought to the floor for a vote? I mean, is this going to be potentially as damaging as some are making it out to be?
Yeah, there's a fair amount of damage across the board here. There's damage in terms of the president's credibility as somebody who has positioned himself as somebody that would take on Washington, get things done, the can-do president, and change the status quo. Number one, that's in question. So he has lost some political capital very early on in his term. Number two, the Republicans in general, both on Capitol Hill and with respect to the president, have lost momentum. This sort of sense that you build on things, you build on wins, and that members that you count on, lock in more tightly when you have had a past win and they expect you to win again and you want to be part of that. And number three, on the technical part of this, the fact is that the Republican health care bill would have reduced the budget baseline for tax reform by about $1 trillion over 10 years, which means that now Republicans have to find $1 trillion more in offsets, meaning to close loopholes, reduce deductions, credits, and other preferences, if they want their reduction in tax rates to be budget neutral. So that puts all kinds of other things in play, and compounding this, of course, is that there is some question, particularly over on the Senate side, about the border adjustment tax concept, which is another $1 trillion over 10 years, that if that falls out. So all that together, it creates a lot more headwind for tax reform. There are some people, and I think this is a fair comment, that the failure of the repeal of Obamacare puts more pressure on Republicans, including very conservative Republicans, to come through for tax reform. But I'm not sure that offsets the negativity that I just described.
Yeah. It's interesting, the idea that because there wasn't a replacement for Obamacare, they're going to have to basically budget for it or account for it in their tax plan. Is there any issue with tax reform that has bipartisan support that they could start with?
Yeah, it's if they you definitely want to regain momentum by building some wins. Taxes, this is a tough area to build momentum within because you want to use this reconciliation process. Democrats now feel emboldened and are less likely, I think, to come across right now and help Republicans bail them out of the hole that they have dug themselves into. There are some things like the medical device tax, for example, on health care where there was Democratic support. There is going to be Democratic support for lowering rates, my guess would be, for lowering rates for middle income and lower income Americans. There will be some support, my guess would be, for some adjustment in terms of the extraterritorial taxes that are trapping capital overseas. I mean, even the Senate Democratic leader, Chuck Schumer, with Republican Senator Rob Portman, had been talking last year and are probably in basic policy agreement about how to address that issue. So there are component pieces both on the individual side and corporate side.
I mean, the research and development tax credit. Unfortunately, I hate to do this. We have to leave it there. Former U.S. Congressman Rick Lazio, Senior Vice President at Alliant Group, talking